Our next order of business is 5377, the Restoring Tax Fairness for States and Localities Act. This bill is the result of the hard work of a working group established by Mr. Thompson with input from many members, both on and off the committee, and I applaud them for all of their work and their effort. At this point, let me recognize the sponsor of the legislation, Mr. Suozzi, who has been a fierce advocate for restoring fairness to our tax code, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your incredible leadership, not only on this issue, but your continual efforts to fight for taxpayers across America as chairman of this committee. I also want to thank the chairman of our subcommittee on select revenue measures, Mike Thompson, for his leadership of our subcommittee and of the SALT working group. And I want to especially thank Bill Pasquarello, my colleague, who's provided the vision, the passion, and the energy for all of our colleagues to move this important legislation forward before the end of this year. I also want to thank my Republican colleague from Long Island, Pete King, who's retiring next year. He knows how important SALT is to taxpayers and to our constituents. Finally, I want to thank the staff of the Ways and Means Committee for taking the variety of bills regarding the state and local tax deduction and piecing together this solution, which makes perfect sense. It not only restores tax fairness, but it's paid for. The Restoring Tax Fairness for States and Localities Act is about exactly what its name says, restoring tax fairness. The 2017 GOP tax bill was unfair because it requires American taxpayers to pay taxes on the taxes they've already paid. A tax upon a tax on your expenses, not your income. It defies common sense, and it's not fair. It was unfair because state and local taxes have been around long before the federal income tax was created in 1913. And the original drafters of the tax code in 1913 specifically created the SALT deduction to prevent the federal government from hurting state and local governments that pick up the garbage, plow our roads, put out our fires, protect our families, and teach our children. They referred to Alexander Hamilton's admonition in the Federalist Papers number 31 that state and local taxes must be protected because, quote, all the resources of taxation might by degrees become the subject of federal monopoly to the entire exclusion and destruction of state governments. It's unfair because supporters of the SALT cap have boasted, they've actually boasted, that limiting this deduction will chase taxpayers out of states like mine. And as a result, the remaining middle and lower income families who cannot afford to move will be left behind holding the bag. The 2017 cap on SALT broke a century-old agreement, a covenant, to protect state and local governments. H.R. 5377 restores that protection, it restores that covenant, and it restores fairness. To restore tax fairness in our country, our bill will, one, eliminate the marriage penalty and double the cap to $20,000 for joint filers in 2019. Two, it fully restores the state and local tax deduction for 2020 and 2021. Three, it fully pays for the cost of this plan by returning the top individual income tax rate to 39.6%, which was cut to 37% under the 2017 tax bill. The benefits of this legislation extend far beyond an isolated few coastal high-income jurisdictions. In fact, before passage of the 2017 tax bill, the average SALT deduction exceeded $10,000 in 25 states and the District of Columbia. Moreover, since the cap is not indexed for inflation, 10 more states will be affected because the average deductions for their residents will go up over the cap in the years ahead. Though I'm trained as a certified public accountant and attorney, it does not take an expert or a tax expert to see that the 2017 tax bill was completely unfair to millions of families across this country. The Restoring Tax Fairness for States and Localities Act is a clear sign that there are still members of this House who will fight for all taxpayers, no matter where they live and no matter who they vote for. Mr. Chairman, I have here letters from the following groups endorsing our legislation: the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, the International Association of Firefighters, the National Association of Realtors, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, and the National Association of Police Organizations. While these endorsements speak for themselves, I'd like to quote from the police letter. Quote, "The fact is that capping of the SALT deduction is a significant tax increase for many suburban homeowners, including law enforcement officers. This puts them squarely in the range of middle-class taxpayers that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was supposed to help. Instead, with the SALT deduction capped at $10,000, many first responders are finding themselves on the wrong end of a tax hike. Mr. Chairman, I ask that these be entered into the record.
So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back my time.
Thank the gentleman.